D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David Janes, intern Emily. We're all with you today.
Yes.
I do want to give a shout out to start the show to the gentleman I saw at the intersection of White Bridge Road and Post Road this morning in Nashville as I was taking my son to school, who was rocking out, playing the most epic air guitar I've ever seen in public while wearing a Discman.
Wow.
Discman.
A Discman?
A Discman.
How
wow.
this
how,
is
how did the headphones look?
I need to interview this guy because
Yeah.
I want to know how you do.
Wired over the ear headphones.
Oh, wow. That's old
Wired.
school.
Did you think you were in a time machine for a second?
I said, Arlo, look at that guy rocking out. And he goes, who's rocking out? I said, that man right there. Shout out to that gentleman who was getting on the bus. He was crossing the street. He was riffing up a storm, man. I'm more of an air drummer than an air guitarist.
I think air guitar looks cooler in public than the air drums. Don't you think, Willie?
I think both can be considered very cringy. From
air guitar. It's just,
I think I'm more a natural air drummer myself.
Wow.
Than air guitar.
So we got two drummers in the air guitar.
Yeah.
We can make a band.
Are you air band? Are you? I had a buddy in high school. He was so mad.
Air benders.
Yeah.
Yes.
He wanted to enter the talent show with his buddies as an air band and perform in the school talent show, and they didn't let him in. He was like, "Why?
What song was he gonna play?"
I forget what song.
In the air tonight.
In the air tonight.
You could.
By the way, did you know that there is a U.S. Air Guitar Championship?
It is?
It's on TV.
Yes.
What?
I stumbled on something like that on one of the channels. It's like ESPN or something.
Let me read you the rules. The standard rules of play for the U.S. Air Guitar Championship. Round 1, freestyle. Each competitor performs to a song of their choice. Round 2, top competitors from round 1 perform surprise song. This year's live regionals will abide by the standard U.S. Air Guitar performance rules. Each performance is played to 1 minute of a song. The 60 seconds can start anywhere in the song. The instrument must be invisible and must be a guitar.
So what are they?
Backup bands, real or air, are not allowed.
So
That's
how do they judge this? Is it by movement?
It's creativity.
Is it by making sure you hit are they watching your fingers? Because it's just me. So are they watching to see if you actually hit the chord? That'd be interesting.
I've never been asked to judge.
Us three.
Okay, we'll start.
Air drummers, air guitar. Who gonna be the air singer? Emily, that's
the lead singer.
While we ponder this, we do have some breaking Predators news. Barry Trotz has announced that the team has hired Luke Richardson as an assistant coach. Richardson is replacing Todd Richards on Andrew Burnett's staff, joining assistant coaches Derek McKenzie, Darby Hendrickson, and Ben Vanderklok. So Luke Richardson in as an assistant coach, replacing Todd Richards. Luke Richardson was head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks most recently. I believe he also had a tenure as an assistant coach for the Montreal Canadiens. So
Correct.
Luke Richardson, former Blackhawks head coach, joining the Predators as an assistant coach, replacing Todd Richards.
I'm looking over Luke Richardson's playing career, and I'm looking to see if he crossed paths at all with Andrew Burnett or anyone in the Predator circles. I don't see it off the top of my head, but Luke Richardson played 1,400 plus games in the league as a defenseman. And as you know, if you follow the Predators, you follow the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks haven't been very good. He got canned as the Blackhawks coach last year. He had no chance of winning. But I think he's considered a bright coaching prospect, still relatively young. I mean, I guess for coaches, maybe more middle of the road, 56 years old. But here's what I think they have in mind here, and I'm curious what Barry Trotz has to say about this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to this press conference. But defense. He's a defenseman. The defensemen on the Predator team right now lack attention to detail. They need to develop some of these guys. When you look at some of the effective decors, it's not always superstar here, superstar over here. It's really about, a lot of times, for at least 3 of the guys on your defense core, like you need a couple of studs, but you need the other guys to really be fits with the system. Nico Mikkola, who was he before he went to the Panthers? Nobody. Barely playing. He was a healthy scratch a lot of times. Gustav Forsling, the most famous. Healthy scratch all the time, playing for wherever he was playing. Chicago was one of them. Picked up off the waiver wire. He's a stud. Now, those are extreme examples, but good teams can take a defenseman and get the most out of him. I don't think the Predators were in that category at all last year. They did not have good attention to detail. So I'm hoping Luke Richardson can help in that area. I would guess that's going to be his area. That's what Todd Richards' area was last year, although Todd Richards has been a little bit of everything in his career. And so I don't know that Luke Richardson specializes in defense development, but he was a longtime defenseman in the league that should have some things to teach.
So Barry Trotz is scheduled to address reporters at 3:00. As soon as that is over, Trotz will join Jared Stillman on Stillman and Company. So I would say the latter half of the 3:00 hour, 3:30, 3:40, somewhere around there. Jared will give us a more specific time later.
Let's address what will obviously be the low-hanging fruit.
Head coach. Former head coach.
He's a former head coach.
And that's what I was thinking. I was going to go to Stillman route.
Yeah. So I think that there will be a lot of people wondering about that.
But you almost have to.
You've got a guy on your staff that is a head coach, and you hope that he can mesh with Andrew Brunette. You hope it works out, right? But if it doesn't, like there's going to be, we mentioned this, when they decided to keep Andrew Brunette, we knew right away he will be at the top of the list of coaches on the hot seat. And if they get off to a poor start, you will hear rumblings. They can't help that. They cannot control that. And so this will only just be another guy that could fuel speculation, right?
So in a situation like that, and I'm not saying that this is why or this could potentially happen to the Predators, but in situations like that, wouldn't that cause more of a distraction than anything? Because you got somebody on your staff that was a former head coach, and you even said, listen, there's not many that could have won in Chicago over the last, so many years.
His record in Chicago, he coached 190 games, according to the NHL. He had a record of 57, 118, and 15.
Well, that's not good by any stretch of the imagination.
And
but
they knew they were going to
be. But it's like, wouldn't that cause more of a distraction if things aren't going the way Nashville in this situation, but any team, when you have a guy on a hot seat and you get off to say in the first 10 games, first 10 games, you end up losing 4 of them. I mean, or 5 of them. You're going to be on a hot seat.
Let's just define it as a general shaky start.
Exactly. A shaky start. You're going to hear, and it's going to end up being a distraction.
I think it's going to depend on the people, right? This isn't, I think if it were Toronto, or a market like that, it would be a constant every day. In Nashville, I think you can manage it. It certainly would help to get off to a good start.
Yeah.
Luke Richardson is about the same age as Andrew Brunette. They played at the same time. I'm just racking my brain. Look, both played for a lot of different teams. I don't think they were ever on the same team. I don't know if they know each other or work together, but I think that will be important to establish, what's his role with Andrew Brunette at the top, right? Andrew Brunette has been tasked to adjust, and they still haven't made their main roster changes that we think might be coming, at least a couple of them, right? There'll be a couple significant moves between now and the start of the season. Probably not a ton, but they have to decide, how do they want to play? How do they want to defend? They did not defend well last year. I know they weren't scoring, right? We know that's big. But to me, a bigger problem, the biggest problem, was their defensive structure, attention to detail was poor. So if he's being brought in to do that, that's probably what they're going to talk about a lot today. But they will not be able to avoid the question of here's a coach who is being a head coach, and he will be viewed as a guy from afar as, well, you've got him there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time in the league if that scenario happened.
And you had that stat, right, Adam? If you fire a head coach, the bump is what?
It's significant.
Yeah.
It's well, maybe not significant. It's noticeable that teams that fire coaches in the NHL, they do get a bump in the standings. This was the quote from Barry Trotz in the news release. Quote, Luke brings a wealth of NHL experience as both a player and coach to our staff, and we are excited to welcome him and his family to the organization. With that experience, we believe he will be a valuable new voice and set of eyes, not just for our defensemen, but for our coaching staff. His strong character, leadership, perspective as a former NHL head coach, and ability to connect with both young and veteran players will elevate our team on and off the ice. And as we discussed, Luke Richardson.
You said that they said in there Todd Richards is not going to be back? Okay.
Todd Richards. At the same time, I want to thank Todd Richards. This is Barry Trotz in the news release. At the same time, I want to thank Todd Richards for his contributions to the Predators over the past 5 seasons and wish him well in his next endeavor. And as we said, Luke Richardson, former head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. And there were 2 things that happened early in the season last season in Chicago that raised some eyebrows. The first was Luke Richardson was criticized for scrambling his line combinations too often, particularly with Connor Bedard. There were times where he shifted Bedard, who is a natural center, to the wing and played him in more of a defensive role with more defensive-minded players. I remember there was also this issue with Taylor Hall before Taylor Hall was traded to Carolina, where Richardson scratched Hall, and Hall said that it came out of nowhere. He didn't have much conversation with Richardson about the decision. But
I will say this about that whole thing, the swapping up the lines. Terry Crisp. Terry Crisp has a huge file of Crispyisms that I have filed away that I love as using my sort of basic adages when learning the game. Here's what he said. And this was in reference to the early Predators teams that were expansion. And they had no real talent, right? The rules were different. These were guys off the scrap heap. So I was asking him one time at a morning shift, I was like, Crispy, boy, Trotzy, he really likes to shake up those line combinations, doesn't he? Because it always, when you shake up the lines, everybody starts talking about it. All the media. Well, he's shaking up the lines. He goes, Willie, I told Trotzy the other day, you can shuffle the deck all you want, but if all you got is 2s and 3s in the deck, you're going to come out with 2s and 3s, whatever you shuffle.
No matter how you slice it.
And so he had an ace in Connor Bedard, but he had a lot of 2s and 3s.
He had a lot of 2s. He had a lot of 2s and 3s. So the
Predators, what are you going to do?
The Predators have hired former NHL head coach Luke Richardson as an assistant coach, replacing Todd Richards on the bench. Again, Barry Trotz will address reporters, I believe, at 3:00 this afternoon, but he will join Jared Stillman right after that for an exclusive interview with Jared Stillman.
So 2 1,000+ game coaches, or 2 1,000+ game players as coaches on the staff. That's got to be unique. I wonder how often that has ever happened.
That's a good question.
In the league.
Maybe I can find out.
Yeah, okay. Did you notice? See the light go on with Adam when I said that? He was
like, and he has found it.
I have not found it.
That's interesting.
I love
factoid.
Hey guys, keep talking. I'm looking for it.
Joey from Bellevue. Back to our previous conversation. Joey from Bellevue said, I have a Walkman. I showed it to my son, and he was like, what's that? LOL.
We were about to talk about the Walkman.
Yeah,
if you can be mobile at all with a Walkman, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
That thing starts jumping. And
the gentleman I saw had the Walkman, and he must be left-handed.
But it was a disc, right?
Yes, it definitely was a Walkman. He must be left-handed because he was carrying the Walkman in his right hand.
Now, wait. You're saying Walkman?
Yes. Discman. Sorry. Discman.
Because a Walkman, you can run all day with the tape in there.
Yeah.
I still have it. I don't know if I could get mine to work.
Tomato.
Disc man is a whole different deal trying to move around.
He must be left-handed because he had the disc man
Uh-huh.
in his right hand, and he was air strumming with his left hand. And I was impressed. I almost wanted to roll down the window and give him a round of applause, but I thought that might be a little bit weird.
That might have been a little weirdish.
Right. I mean,
Just
I did have a Discman at one point. I sort of came in near the tail end of the Discman era. Then I had an iPod, like a lot of people did. Like kids these days, David and Emily, did you ever have a burned CD?
Of course.
Oh,
Okay.
David might. Yeah,
phase.
David's
I went
not
through that
that.
phase.
He may look younger, but he's not.
I can
young.
guarantee you that somewhere Connor Newt is listening and goes, "A burned CD?
Oh,
Why
definite.
is it on fire? Why is it on
Definite.
fire?"
Why would you burn
Yeah.
a CD?
Why didn't you just put it out? I mean, come on.
I even remember the days where you had to buy singles on iTunes. You wanted that one song, you had to pay 99 cents for the song.
The worst.
That was the worst. It wasn't like now you pay a flat rate on Spotify or
the
Apple
month,
Music
yeah.
and everything is at your fingertips. So I do want to give a shout out to the gentleman that I saw today at the bus stop, just rocking out. We need more of that.
Quickly, I was coming up on what is that? 24 East, going toward obviously Chattanooga, but I was coming to work and come up off of the Thompson Lane Briley exit. But before you come off on that exit, there's two huge, what I appear to be dogs laying there. They're dead.
I saw that.
I wonder if someone, I don't know who to call. It's just two of them laying there, and they're laying in a position where I think somebody put them there. I don't know who to call.
I thought it was a wolf.
Yeah, I thought it was wolves too. And I called my car. I'm like, are there wolves in Nashville? Because I don't know. And they were both just laying there on the side of the road. So if anybody ride past them again, and you know someone that you can call, an authority or something, please do that. Because I'm rushing to work and I didn't know who to call to see if someone could come out and, pick both of the dogs up. It was just sad to see. I don't know if they got hit or they died, because it was so hot yesterday and it's been hot this morning. I don't know, but they're laying there on the side of the road on the 24 East Briley exit.
I did see that.
Just a couple more tidbits on Luke Richardson.
We're all over the place in this opening segment.
These are things. This is so real time. This is a real time radio show, right? This guy, Luke Richardson. And we're trying to get his profile, right? What does he add that they haven't had, right? We talked about defensemen. I think this is an interesting quote from Andrew Burnett, because how they mesh is going to be critical for Andrew Burnett, right? When I think of Luke Richardson, remember they're about the same age. They both played over 1,000 games in the league, so they played a ton of games against each other.
Yes.
Aside from being one of the toughest defensemen to play against during my NHL career, I think of leadership, character, and work ethic. I'm excited to have him join our coaching staff and feel the different perspective he'll bring to our defensemen and team in general, and will make us better. We're looking forward to welcoming the former NHL captain and his family to the Predators and getting to work next season. Now, what do they also lack on the staff besides a defensive coordinator? They don't have the quote-unquote bad cop. I don't know Luke Richardson, but him as a player, and you mentioned, some of his track record as the Chicago coach. I don't know if he fits that bill, but I think if you look at Luke Richardson physically, 6'4", 210, like he's a more of a menacing guy, a tough guy, respected player. I think that will be an ingredient that is needed, who can, because that's just not Andrew Burnett, right? He's not wired like that. And nor are the other assistants on the staff, Darby Hendrickson and Derek McKenzie. They're not saber rattlers. I don't know if Richardson is, but I think he is a step up in that area. So I think defense, toughness, bad cop. I think.
Do you think he can deal with some
mesh.
of the personalities? More importantly, Marshall Salt.
That is a great question. I'm hoping the answer is yes on that. Like, be the guy that can deliver the message a little easier. Like, hey, man, you're not getting it done. I need to see more in this area, right?
So what you're saying is that Luke Richardson is the Andy Sipowicz of the Predators coaching staff. Now, Luke Richardson does not
I think he's a little
resemble
taller than Andy Sipowicz.
doesn't resemble Dennis Franz in any way, shape, or form. But when I think bad cop, I think Andy Sipowicz.
We need to find some taller bad cops.
In the first 20 minutes, we've mentioned Luke Richardson, Andy Sipowicz, Discmans, Dead Dogs / Wolves.
Yeah, we've went across the board.
We got it covered.
We covered everything.
We have run the gamut.
And it's hot as fish grease out there.
Yes, it is.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know how hot fish grease is. 615-737-1025. Luckily for us, Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, will join us next. He will get us back on track. We will talk NFL and Titans with our good friend, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, Tim Hasselbeck. That's coming up next at 615-737-1025. You can join in on the fun as well. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. This Friday, join us at Bridgestone Arena for a party like no other and celebrate the future of Smashville at the Nashville Predators 2025 NHL Draft Party. More details at thegamenashville.com/events. You can catch us at 1025 The Game on our draft night in Smashville on Friday, starting at 6 o'clock. I believe Robbie Stanley and Max Hers will anchor the coverage. Willie Donick might stop by. Hal Gill might stop by. Lindsey Raleigh might stop by. That starts at 6 o'clock, and it's powered by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 429. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. By our favorite dual threat quarterback, ESPN NFL analyst, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, Tim Hasselbeck. Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We are doing wonderful. So we are about a month away from NFL training camp starting, Tim, and we need to fill the time somehow. So we're analyzing teams, which teams could be the surprise teams, so on and so forth. In your mind, which team or teams which team, I should say, singular, which team is being most overhyped this offseason, and why is the correct answer the New England Patriots?
Okay. Well, listen, I think they're going to be good because I love the quarterback. I love the quarterback. Now, if you say to be overhyped, I think you could go that way and just say, look, from a talent perspective, across the entire roster, they, in my estimation, were behind a bunch of other teams in the National Football League. So you just kind of look at it that way and you say, yeah, let's say you like the change of head coach. So let's say that you think Drake May is going to improve. And let's say that, you think that, some of their offseason acquisitions make sense for them. They're still, to turn your roster over in a year in the National Football League is hard. And so sometimes it's like, the love for a team is usually a year too early. I mean, that would be why you could say it. And look, and if you're somebody that has questions about Drake May, if you look at Drake May the way you look at Trevor Lawrence, yeah, then I think you could say that's an overhyped football team.
Kidding aside, which team do you believe is perhaps getting a little bit more love this offseason than you think they deserve?
I mean, listen, I always think the Cowboys get more love than they deserve, right? I look at the Cowboys, I mean, at best, they're the third best team in their division. You have the first-time head coach. You have, a quarterback that's coming off of a major injury. I feel like in terms of the amount that we talk about the Dallas Cowboys, and, I mean, if you just would run through the list and go, okay, the third best team, which I'm not even positive of that, but the third best team in each division, how much do you talk about them, right? So take the AFC, we just talked about the Patriots, take the AFC East. Who's the third best team? The Dolphins, or is it New England? Are we talking about them too much? I just think if you were to do it that way, maybe the Cincinnati Bengals are a team that's the third best team, potentially, or maybe it's Pittsburgh in their division that people maybe talk about too much. So, for me, I think Dallas, there's just always so much hype. And I just think with their division, they could easily be a team that's not even a playoff team.
Tim, at the end of the offseason program, Cam Ward said his confidence level is at a 10 out of 10. Our esteemed afternoon drive host, Jared Stillman, thinks that is impossible because Cam Ward has never taken a meaningful NFL snap, and therefore, how can he be confident in his ability, considering he's never done it before? Since you are a former pro quarterback, how do you feel about Cam Ward saying his confidence level is at a 10 out of 10?
Well, I like the answer, because I think people can prey on you if you say, I'm a 5, I'm going to figure it out, get a couple weeks in. So I like his answer, whether it's true or not, I think the self-talk and maybe the belief in yourself is a good thing. So, and look, maybe he feels good coming out of camp where or the mini camps and the OTAs and that type of stuff, because he looks at it and goes I feel like I belong. I feel like, there was some success in practice. I feel like, while it's presumed that he's going to be the starter, that he probably felt like it went well. I've seen that happen before. And I think that's a good thing. I think reports from the beginning of the offseason on him were good. And I think he probably feels good about the idea that he's going to be a rookie, probably starting the opener. And feeling like he can perform well. So, look, whether he truly feels that way or not, we don't know. But I think I like the posture.
We talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and head coach of the Innsworth Tigers. Now, Tim, I was reading an article the other day. It was pertaining to basketball, and after OKC had won a championship, and they were talking about the blueprint and how basketball has become a young man sport because it's so fast. And Oklahoma, they're trying to figure out if anyone can duplicate their blueprint in regard to their youth and how fast they've developed. And that got me to thinking about the NFL and two teams in particular. One that tried this last year, didn't work, and one that seems to be trying it this year. The Houston Texans. 2 years ago when they drafted CJ Stroud, this was a very young team, and they were explosive on offense. And then the next following year, they went and got an aging receiver, and he ends up getting hurt, and it ends up hampering the offense, along with, I think another one that Dale got hurt as well. And then you look at Washington and what they're trying to do. They add another older veteran to an offense that was pretty damn good. I'm thinking, could this potentially backfire on Washington as it did Houston? Because we believe it's such a young man sport and speed kills. And it seems like they've diminished their speed on offense by going to get Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and I think it's fair. I would also, I guess I would say this, though, when I look at, Washington's receivers from a year ago, like he was doing it with, Olamide Zaccheaus and others. Like, it wasn't like, they had this young team that, in speed, like Terry McLaurin can run. But outside of that, I think that he really was doing it with, journeyman receivers, Downey Brown and Zaccheaus and guys like that. So, yes, you're right. And teammates, you've seen it, where, listen, sometimes a veteran receiver gets signed and, you're like, I don't know, what does he have left? Does he still run the same? And that guy's a great year. Or there's other times you sign a veteran receiver and you're like, this guy's cooked. He's retired and doesn't know it yet. It's just, you've seen it both ways. So, look, I think Deebo Samuel, even the way he looks now, and I think he'll look different by the time the season comes around, I think he's going to be dangerous with the ball in his hands because he's so physical. And I think ultimately with, the other guys that they have in that offense, I think that'll still be a good thing for Washington.
Now, two teams in particular, and it's in the AFC South, Jacksonville and Indianapolis. And I got to thinking about this when Adam asked you the question about the teams and about surprise teams and why, and you picked Dallas. I was surprised you didn't pick Indianapolis or Jacksonville because it seems like every year Indianapolis is the team. And over the last 4 years, it's been, Jacksonville can finally get it. They've got another coach, another offensive mind for Trevor Lawrence, and he's finally going to get it. Have we seen the best of Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, and he is what he is? And will we ever see Richardson underneath center for the Indianapolis Colts? Because Daniel Jones is there and he's young.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I didn't choose either of those teams because I don't think either of those teams are playoff teams. I don't feel like there's a ton of hype around them. And so, but I agree with you. It used to feel like, every year it was either Jacksonville or Indianapolis was like the hot team that everybody was picking to have the breakout year. So here's what I think about Jacksonville. Do I think we've seen the best of Trevor Lawrence? I don't. But do I think that he's going to make some, skyrocket type leap, and all of a sudden, boom, figured it out? Unfortunately, I don't. I thought he was an amazing prospect coming out. For whatever reason, it hasn't totally clicked. There's really no excuses going forward because they've invested, in first-round players all around him. So because of that, he needs to play at a really high level and start to elevate the play of people around him. As for Richardson, I think there's a chance. The report came out about he's healthy, his shoulder's good, and he's going to be healthy to start camp and all that stuff. But and so maybe he starts the year. I don't think he makes it to the halfway point as the starter for Indianapolis. He just hasn't played enough football. I don't think he's going to be consistent enough. And so for that reason, when I look at Indianapolis, like, I think there's going to be a lot of angst there in terms of, what, the direction, for the organization needs to be. I don't think it ends up being Richardson. And I think trying to figure out if it's Daniel Jones, which would be surprising, but maybe their best option. I think they're going to want to try to figure that out this year. And I think it's also going to give them their best chance to win based on what we've already seen from Richardson.
So let's sort of round out the discussion, Tim, if we're touching on the other teams in the AFC South, because we were trying to, sort of take a look at a general picture right now. If we believe that in some order, Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo are the teams to beat in the AFC, how close is Houston to being the fourth best team in your mind?
I think that I don't think I would say super close. Here's what I would say. I think as great as C.J. Stroud's rookie season was and the excitement around it, the thing that they did a remarkable job that year is they played incredible defense, and he didn't turn the ball over. You go look at his numbers. It wasn't like it was just offensive explosion type stuff, especially, the beginning part of, him being the starter there. So, I think that's a group where I think he's a really good player. I do think they're good around him. They need to stay healthy around him. But I don't know that the defense is where it was that first year, and I don't know that the offense is as explosive as maybe people kind of expect it to be. The team I think that could be very interesting is the Chargers. I think they're going to continue to be one of these teams that's extremely physical. I do think that their quarterback, while it hasn't been perfect, I think, when you talk about, if you think about the guys that you talked about, in the AFC, it's Mahomes, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Josh Allen. And I think that when you look at, Herbert, he's actually on par physically with those guys, which I think is saying quite a bit.
One question on quarterback tutelage, because the word on Cam Ward is he's aggressive down the field, and there's already been some comments. Tehran from our staff has done a great job on ESPN asking about these kind of things, how Brian Callahan is teaching Cam Ward to channel the aggressiveness, but also learn, how to read defenses. So in general, because you're doing it on the high school level, it's probably different on the pro level. But when you take a rookie quarterback, how aggressive would you be telling him to be in practice where there's no ramifications for an interception, but at the same time, you're trying to teach him what's there and what's not? Do you start with more conservative plays, or do you encourage him to be aggressive and then sort of back down as you learn?
Yeah. No, I would not start off aggressive. I would start off by, a little bit like, think about how everyone raved about C.J. Stroud. I don't even think he threw 30 touchdown passes, but he, for the longest time, I think he only had 3 interceptions that rookie year. That gives you a chance. If you're not turning the football over, you're going to have a chance. And so, how, I saw Andy Reid teach quarterbacks, how I feel like quarterbacks should be taught is, listen, just take a progression read, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're getting through it. You never, pass, door number 2 if it's open to see that maybe you have something bigger behind door number 3. You just don't do it. That's that old saying, you're not going to go broke taking a profit. So how I think you should teach all young quarterbacks is you find the completion, you find the completion, you find the completion. And so, and there's even a saying, my brother says it, to our quarterbacks at Ensworth, it's the quarterback's job to find completions. It's the play caller's job to get first downs, conversions. And so, I think that you start that way. Then when a guy has mastered, what you're doing, right, letting the coverage dictate where the ball goes and all that stuff, then I think you can go, okay, now I'm going to look this flat defender down to get the throw in behind them. Now, I'm going to take this shot on this vertical now, but I don't think you do that until you've mastered it. I really don't, because I think you've got to prove that you can live inside the structure of an offense before you give the guys, the keys to the car and saying like, all right, you go start, living outside of the offense now, doing what you think is best. I think there is a natural progression to learning the position. That's how I would describe it.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, joining us on D. Mace, Finken, and Donick, as he does every Tuesday. Tim, great stuff as always. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good. See you, fellas.
Yep. Tim Hasselbeck joining us on the program. 615-737-1025. We will react to what Tim had to say. Coming up next, you can as well at 615-737-1025. You can join Robbie and Rexroad, although I think it's Robbie and Paul Kaharski, as they broadcast live at the Dunkin' Grand reopening in Hermitage at 5205 Old Hickory Boulevard on Friday. Starting at 8 a.m., the first 100 people in line will win free coffee for 100 days. Plus, 1025 The Game will have your chance to win tickets to an upcoming Nashville concert.
Let's tell you about F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. Friday is our day every week to take it to the bank. And F&M Bank has been a great sponsor of our show for going on a couple years now. The reigning champion, Derek Mason, is ready to defend his title coming up this fall. But every Friday we make some picks. We have some fun. And F&M Bank wants to make your banking easier. That's more fun than stressing about your finances and things like that. That's their motto. And they have a lot of tools. One that I talk about all the time is the Smart Swipe debit card. It's automatic. If you make a purchase of $5.10, it's going to round it up to $6. Where does that 90 cents go? It goes into your savings account. So every time you use your debit card with the Smart Swipe, you're saving money because it's going to round up those extra pennies and dimes and quarters. And over time, you're going to build the savings account without even thinking about it. Banking made easy on purpose. MyFMBank.com is the website where you have 20 locations in our listening area. Find the nearest one to you. They're right in your backyard. They're right in the middle of your community. It's F&M Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Aaron, great to see you. Great catching up. It feels as though since you signed with the Steelers, it's been, I won't say more candid, but it does feel as though there's been a different, vibe from you. Is it, safe to say that this is your last year playing as someone who, wants to savor everything? I would like to know when it is your last year, just because every time you're running through that tunnel, it'd be incredible just to say, like, hey, let's make sure we really appreciate what's going on here. Is that something you've thought about? Is that something that you know for sure? Or are you also just kind of taking it week by week, seeing how your body's feeling and seeing how the mind feels as you go throughout the season?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is it. That's why we just did a 1-year deal. Steelers didn't need to, put any extra years on that or anything. So, this was really about finishing with a lot of love and fun and peace for the career that I've had. I mean, I played 20 freaking years. It's been a long run, and I've enjoyed it. And what better place to finish than in one of the cornerstone franchises of the NFL with Mike Tomlin and a great group of leadership and great guys in the city that expects you to win.
Congratulations, man.
Hell yeah.
That was Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show.
Why did they start
Applause?
clapping? Yeah,
This is your last year. Congratulations.
Yeah. Why?
Applause?
Yeah,
He goes on that show all the time.
he'll be back next week.
No one, no one is surprised that Aaron Rodgers
Oh man.
is going to call it a career after this season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. By the way, the journalist in me was cringing through that question.
Yeah.
I don't know who was asking that question. Pat McAfee has a lot of hangers on. I don't know all of their names.
Yes. They wear hats and T-shirts. And
Yeah.
Chud and
Cowboy
Bud
hats
and
sometimes.
Fud. I don't know
Mud.
what their names are.
Unshaven.
Right.
Stud,
But-
sud.
Spit the question out, man.
Rob, I think
Land
is
the
what it is.
plane.
Yes. Is
He
this
had
your
to-
last year,
He had
Aaron
to circle
Rodgers?
around. He had to circle around one more time.
He's got a glaze.
Got a couple windshields. You got to circle around with that.
Can I give a very quick journalism lesson
Yes.
for a
Oh
moment?
man.
Please do.
So,
I'm sure the McAfees are listening, and
yes,
they're gonna.
David, send this clip right to Indianapolis, please.
I'll make sure to do that.
The one thing I learned about asking questions is just be direct, because if you give the subject so many different off ramps, like that person was giving Aaron Rodgers, they can take that question anywhere they want. Just be direct. Be direct.
Is this your last year?
Basically.
You can't handle the truth,
I
young man.
understand that you want to have some tact. You
Yeah.
don't have to go full bore, but you want to have the mix of just being concise. You don't.
Aaron,
ramble.
is this your last year because you're old and
He said something about running out of the tunnel.
running
It's
out
Yeah.
of the
electric when you
tunnel
run out the
and,
tunnel, man. Like, you're just
We
so
want to
good.
see you.
Like, it's just so fun to watch you play and swing the ball around, guys.
Yeah.
He should have said.
There's a lot of
I don't
idol.
think you can
There's a
handle
lot
the
of
truth.
idol worship on the Pat McAfee show. But nevertheless, back to Tim Hasselbeck. Willie, I thought the question you asked him at the end was interesting, talking about the approach for a young quarterback. What did you make of his response?
I wasn't 100% sure which way he was going to go. I thought him quoting his brother Matt, who's obviously involved in the Ensworth developing of how they teach young football players, is a good one. What did he say? It's the quarterback's responsibility to get completions.
Yes.
It's the play caller's responsibility to get first down.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting, simple way of teaching to a youngster. But we know that Cam Ward has that aggressive gene that got him to where he is, right? That's what a lot of people talked about in the evaluation process, that he's not afraid to take the chances down the field. And I would say there's plenty of quarterbacks that have been like that. And so I was wondering if it would be backwards, right? Don't take that away from him. Don't discourage him for using his tools and sort of see what you can get away with, see what you can't. But Tim took the opposite approach. Let's build almost like the Top Gun simulators, right? You start on the simulator, you start fighting one-on-one, you fight, and then you work your way up to fighting like 7 different jets, right? They have a stair-stepping thing. So I don't know what Brian Callahan has said. He said a lot, right? And I wonder if it's different for Ward than it was for Will Levis. I'm curious about that part too. Or do you think he has one way of teaching quarterbacks?
I think when you're talking about the basics, the foundation, I think there is one way, but I think as you start to sort of, get to learn the quarterback, there are some nuances in how you go about it with each individual player, each individual quarterback. And it's the same with players. You may have to teach it a different way, or that player may learn a different way. So I don't think, in regards to Brian Callahan changing the foundation, no, I think that's still there. But I think because of what you did with Will Levis last year, you probably learned, and hopefully you have learned from some things you may have done or didn't do, and you want to apply those things now to Cam Ward. But you're going to take a little bit of what, and Brian has already said, he's going to take a little bit of what, they did in Miami to try to make things feel comfortable, at least at the beginning for Cam Ward, do some things that he likes. But as far as like the fundamentals, how you read it, I think what Tim said was right. I think, especially quarterbacks that are just innately aggressive with the football, whether it's a Brett Favre type or Aaron Rodgers, some of these other quarterbacks that are aggressive. But I think over time they learn how to be aggressive, but at certain times they're careful. They're aggressively careful with the ball. If you can get what I'm saying. But with young quarterbacks, you gotta start from, listen, read this thing from bottom to top. Because if you teach them to read it from top to bottom, they're always going to want to go for that big throw first. And what you're trying to do, the best way for a quarterback to get in rhythm, man, is sometimes it's just to hit those quick passes, just like a jump shooter. Make those free throws that get you in a rhythm,
and then
build
your range
out from there. Unless you're Steph Curry and you just start at the 3-point line. It's different.
That's an interesting thing because I when I would teach my little version of basketball camps, I was a camp rat. I went to 1 million basketball camps, but it was before the days of the 3-point shooting. When I was, as an older guy, going back and doing my own basketball camp, I noticed every kid, when you weren't teaching them, they would go right to the 3-point line. Even my kids, 8, 9 years old. Let me see if I can make a 3-pointer. And they were like, you lose your mechanics, right?
Exactly.
You're just like throwing the ball up there. But they can't help it. They want to hit a 3. They want to tell their buddy it's fun to hit 3s. But I would try to stress, start in, get the form, and then move back. You'll get to the point. You'll grow. You'll get stronger. You'll hit the 3. So it makes a lot of sense from that. But I am curious with Ward how do you channel that ability he's got.
Wes in Clarksville on our text line said, why would Pittsburgh sign up for Rodgers knowing they only got 1 year? I don't think they have a team like Brady did in Tampa to try and go for a Super Bowl. Let me ask you this question, Wes. Would you want Mason Rudolph to be your starting quarterback? I wouldn't. Doesn't sound like a great existence. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we're going to play a word game. This may come as a shock. I love word games. And we're going to play a word game with the Tennessee Titans. So be prepared. 615-737-1025. Tune into ESPN 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on Jacksonville, the Jumbo Shrimp. Pre-game begins at 5:50 and the first pitch is at 6:05. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball and ESPN 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. It's time to play a word game. I love word games, crosswords, word searches. I think I'm too old for word searches, but my son brings home word searches and he doesn't complete them, so I do it. Little brain teaser. So I was inspired by an article on foxsports.com written by Ben Arthur, former Tennessee Titans beat reporter for the Tennessean. One word that describes every NFL team's offseason. And I'm not going to reveal what Ben Arthur's choice was for the Tennessee Titans, but this is what I want from all of you at 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I want one word to describe the Titans offseason. And don't cheat by putting multiple words together with hyphens.
So it's a one word.
I want
Just
one word.
word.
Okay.
I don't want two words with a hyphen and for you to claim it's one word. No, I need one word to describe the Titans offseason. So I'm going to pose the question first to Willie and Derek. And when we've all gone through with our words, I will reveal Ben Arthur's words. So Willie, off the top of your head, one word you would use to describe the Titans offseason.
Very.
One word to describe the Titans offseason.
This is live radio.
Foundation. Foundation.
Foundation.
That's what I kept saying.
Yeah, no, you guys need to say
Foundational.
Foundational. That works. And why did you land on foundational?
Just because I think we're starting from the bottom here, and you've got to start somewhere, and they don't have a foundation right now, and they're hoping they are building the foundation now.
Okay,
that's what I would say.
Derek Mason,
and obviously Cam Ward, everything is riding on him. They put all their eggs in his basket, and so he better be the guy on the bottom of the pyramid.
All right. So Willie Donick chooses foundational. I think that's a solid choice. What about you, Derek Mason? One word to describe the Tennessee Titans offseason.
I am with Willie. In regards to what the team is trying to do because of the players that they went and got. I think they're trying to, build something here from the ground up. And it shows by some of the players they went out and got, and what they are doing through the draft, develop, and retain. But my one word for them this offseason is hopeful. It's hopeful because you hope that L'Jarius Sneed comes back and is closer to what he was that made you go out and get him than not. You're hopeful that the quarterback can be up to speed. You're hopeful that the offensive line with the additions will be much better than they were last season. You hope that those guys on the outside, those receivers and tight ends, you hope that they take that next step. All of them, even Ridley. So to me, you have all of these areas that you hope get better. So for me, this offseason is an offseason of hope. You just hope that everything that you've done works out.
Hope is hope. Hope is hope. Hope can be dangerous.
It can be dangerous.
Hope can be dangerous. So Willie Donick chooses foundational.
And I agree with that.
Derek Mason agrees with Willie, but chooses the word hopeful. I think the word I'm going to go for, I'm going to say, I don't know if it's not an adjective, it's a noun, is upside. You're hoping that Cam Ward, of course, has upside as the number 1 overall pick. You better have upside. J.C. Latham moving to right tackle. Perhaps there's more upside for J.C. Latham there. Upside with the entire offensive line with bringing in Dan Moore, and you hope for more from Peter Skoronski. That's my word, upside. They are banking on quite a bit of upside that their young players, Cam Ward, J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Tajay Spears, the wide receivers they drafted.
Mhm.
Yeah, they need some hits.
Yes.
So my word is upside. Ben Arthur's word was Derek Mason's word, hopeful. And Ben Arthur wrote, quote, with number 1 overall pick Cam Ward in the picture, Tennessee is banking on the former Miami star to be its franchise quarterback for years to come. That would alter the trajectory of the Titans, who have registered 3 straight losing seasons. So Willie chooses foundational. Derek chooses hopeful. I choose upside. Let me read some of your text at 615-737-125. Skylar said sad.
Okay.
Sad.
One texter said sensible. I think that's reasonable, unless you were on Team Willie, because Willie was stark raving mad when the Titans did not take the Giants reported offer. So if you think it was sensible to take Cam Ward instead of taking the reported offer,
Yeah, and I've tried not to just bring that up every day because it's done. It's over. They've moved forward. So I'm going to be on the Cam Ward track because that's what they chose. But I am on record saying at the time I would not have turned down that package. But
what did Brian Callahan said? What did he say? That the picks
didn't matter.
The picks didn't matter.
Yeah,
he did not.
And he wasn't alone. It was
No.
all a version of one answer. That if you think you've got your guy, D-Mace was saying this for months going in. If you think you've got your guy, take him.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that there is a price that you would take that is worth it, even if you think he could be good. You can't know, but here we are.
So Skylar said sad. One texter said sensible. Brian says uninspiring. Tommy says optimistic. Dylan says lackluster. One texter says hopeful. Another says hopeful again. That was James. Cameron, backups, because that's all they drafted after Cam Ward. Wes in Clarksville, my one word is run. I hope Cam can run because he's going to be running for his life every play.
You know, one of the texters said, it may have been a text or what you're reading on Fox, the 3 losing seasons. This will mark the second time in this franchise history, and I'm just talking about the Titans. I'm not talking about the Houston Oilers, that they have had 3 or more straight losing seasons. And I didn't even realize that. I didn't realize how bad they were from 12 through 15.
Oh,
they were bad.
That was rough.
6-10, 7-9, 2-14, 3-13. That was the Wisenhunt Munchak era. Munchak for 2 years. Well, really, Munchak for 2 years, Wisenhunt for a year and a half, and then Malarkey took over, and that's when they started winning. But they're close to having a 4th straight losing season, and the way it looks, I know all these words we're picking, hopeful and building and everything else, upside, but how close is this team actually to being a winning team? I'm not saying going to the Super Bowl. I'm just saying, will it be another year of 6-10 or 6-11, or 7-10? Because that would be an improvement, but still, it would mark the 4th year this team has had a losing record if it happens.
One texter says, my one word is shrug. One texter says future. Josh says hilarious. I would like Josh to explain why this offseason was hilarious. So, Josh, I know you're listening. Text back. Wes in Hermitage says, one word for this team's offseason. Exhausting. I'm ready for football.
Exhausting.
I mean, it has been a long offseason. Yeah. We've been talking about the Titans having the number 1 overall pick since January. John from Nashville says uncertain. Josh texted back in and said delusional, but Josh still has not explained why he said hilarious. So, Josh, I need you to explain hilarious. But it
delusionally hilarious.
But you're getting a look into the mind of a Tennessee Titans fan. Again, we have a couple for hopeful, which was Derek's word and Ben Arthur's word at Fox Sports. You see lackluster, uninspiring, optimistic. So you're there. It's running the gamut.
Mhm.
You're seeing plenty of Titans fans who think that the team did not really do enough. You're seeing Titans fans who think that Cam Ward brings that hope, which, as I said, is quite dangerous. So it is an I think it's a good mix here.
Mhm.
A good mix of optimistic, positive, and negative as well.
I wonder for those that are more pessimistic than anything. I wonder why do they feel that way? Do they feel that the Titans didn't do enough in the draft, or do they feel that we wish they would have moved out of the first spot and went and got more picks? I just want to understand, like, because yes, we can be hopeful. There can be an upside, but I don't think they did anything that made their team worse than last season. So for those that are pessimistic in this situation, why are you?
If I had to guess, some of it probably has to do with Brian Callahan.
Yeah.
Because he didn't do a great job for a lot of people in his first season as a coach. The questions still remain about whether Cam Ward truly is a number 1 overall pick caliber talent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that probably plays into it as well. Eli says predictable. By the way, I believe the reason why Josh said it was hilarious was he was talking about Brian Callahan's competition.
Oh.
Which I suppose he found hilarious. One texter said, super. But to answer your question, and you can answer Derek's question as well at 615-737-1025. If I had to guess why some fans are feeling negative, it's the Titans, and they haven't given us much reason to be positive in recent years. I think Brian Callahan probably plays a factor into this. Again, Cam Ward, is he truly a number 1 overall caliber pick, talent-wise? Who's to say? Mike from Nolansville says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
That's one
which
word.
is one word.
Yes.
So technically, Mike is right. I'm not sure how this applies, although I am a Mary Poppins fan. But that would be my reason. I also think some of the Brian says I'm pessimistic because the coach comes across as a total clown.
Oh, okay. I
I'm
mean,
not,
I don't feel that way, but I mean, I think what is happening here is that, and we should have known that this was going to happen, and we've talked about it. I believe that now you have someone that is so opposite of your previous coach. Now you got this. Now you have gotten an opportunity to see him, and now you don't want him anymore because even though you fussed about the last coach and how honored he was at times, you rather that than what you're getting now, because not only does he perceive to be this nice individual, you're not winning games either. You can be nice, but you got to win games. You can be a ass, but you got to win games. That was Vrabel. As long as he was winning games, he was good. The minute he stopped winning games, it became, we don't want this is too much.
Bill Belichick.
Yeah, exactly.
Prime example.
And then you bring in Brian Callahan. Yes, he's not like him. Yes, but he's not winning. Now it's like, oh, he can't coach. He's this, he's that. And I get it, but I think every first year coach comes in and they are learning on the fly because this is their first head coaching job. Vrabel, I think he got a bump because he came into a almost ready-made team. And and I'm not faulting Vrabel for that because he did an excellent job at making sure they sustained that until the last couple of years. So I'm not faulting him for that. But Callahan didn't come in with that. And people will know it, but still they're blaming him because he's too nice and they're not winning.
Wes in Clarksville says there wasn't a whole lot they could have done player-wise more than what they did in the offseason. I just wish when they got this new GM, they should have let him decide on Callahan's job and go from there. I'm tired of the carousel. I mean, the constant turnover in the front office And that head coach certainly gives off the vibe, as Brian says on our text line, that the organization is a bleep show. 615-737-1025. Which one word, again, one word, not 2 words with a hyphen, one word would you use to describe the Titans offseason at 615-737-1025? We'll also look at some of the other teams on this list from Ben Arthur of Fox Sports. We'll look at the AFC South and some other notable teams and the one word that Ben Arthur used to describe them. But we'll take your Titans thoughts as well. One word to describe the Titans offseason at 615-737-1025. I do have some tickets to give away. Let's see who has our number on speed dial. Be caller number 1 at 615-737-1025, and you will win a 4-pack of tickets to see the FIFA Club World Cup match at Geodis Park this Thursday night between Al Hilal, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, of Saudi Arabia and CF Pachuca of Mexico. That's at Geodis Park on Thursday, 8 o'clock start, 615-737-1025. Caller number 1. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, the game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. This week's Nashville's best deal is Red's Hot Chicken. Red's Hot Chicken on West End is bringing the heat. Don't miss their hot chicken and waffles or the mac and cheese crunch wrap. Grab a $30 gift card now for only $15 while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. On an unrelated note, one texter asked if we are planning on having Barry Trotz on the station before the NHL draft. Indeed, he will be on this afternoon with Jared Stillman during the 3 o'clock hour, in the latter half of the 3 o'clock hour. So sometime between 3:30 and 4. Barry Trotz.
Are we sure?
That's what Jared said. I mean, if it's anything, so as I understand it, Barry Trotz is holding a news conference at 3 o'clock at Bridgestone Arena. And if his news conference today is anything like his news conference a month and a half ago, at the end of the season, when he had a 25-minute opening statement, Barry may show up for the Stillman and Company program at 5:47. So we'll see.
I was just going to say, it might be. I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions, especially with the story of the day that they have hired Luke Richardson as an assistant coach. I think there'll be a lot of questions on a lot of fronts. Of course, the draft being the next thing top of the list, but of course, all the speculation of how you're going to go about trying to reshape the roster with the little tweaks that you do every year. What's Richardson's role? There'll be plenty of questions. So I think the time, it's hard to know exactly what time he'll come on, but
he's scheduled.
Yeah,
but
he will go on.
He will be on.
And I would recommend listening to Jared and Barry Trotz. It's always compelling conversation.
He will be on the Stillman and Company program at some point. He's scheduled to be on during the 3 o'clock hour. So let's continue our conversation. We will get into the NHL draft coming up in a little bit. I did some research that I think is instructive for what the Predators might be doing on Friday. But as inspired by Ben Arthur of FoxSports.com, I asked all of you at 615-737-1025, which one word would you use to describe the Titans offseason? Speaking of Jared, one texter says Stillman, because he will be the loudest thing you hear all week if they don't win. One texter says, my word is hopeful. I think for many, the word is more like resigned. Resigned to the fact that no matter who is making the decisions, they'll make the wrong one. That's JW in Bellevue. One texter says circus. Joey from Gallatin says developmental. And Scott says skibbity, as in skibbity toilet.
Explain.
Exactly.
Do I want to? I mean,
probably not.
It's some weird thing that kids say. I'm a little bit too old for it.
Okay.
But sounds bad.
You olds wouldn't get it.
Skibbity toilet. Yeah.
Skibbity toilet.
Skibbity toilet.
Skibbity toilet.
I like it. It rolls off the tongue, though.
It does. So what is the skibbity toilet?
Willie's going to show up at home later and say to his college graduate daughter and his rising sophomore in college son and go, hey, guys, skibbity toilet.
They're going to look at you like
See
you're
what kind
crazy.
of reaction I get?
Exactly.
Man.
Nah, Dad. Miss me with that one. That's what they're going to say.
One texter says, would like to hear what Adam's Tubi playlist is for this week. Does Tubi have playlists? I thought Tubi just had Cam Ward's docuseries.
Tubi has a bunch of stuff.
I don't know.
I'm watching that Cam Ward docuseries. I don't care what y'all say.
I know you are. So
all y'all will watch it.
So let's look at some of the other one words that Ben Arthur used to describe other teams in the NFL. And fortunately, Houston, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville, in alphabetical order, they're one right after the other. So let's start with Houston. Ben Arthur's word was underwhelming. He writes, after C.J. Stroud was the second most sacked quarterback in 2024, the Texans entered the offseason in dire need of retooling their offensive line, but their moves to address the group, including trading away perennial Pro Bowl left tackle Laramie Tunsil, feel disappointing. Thoughts on underwhelming for the word of the offseason for the Houston Texans?
I'm not sure if I would, necessarily say underwhelming. I would say more of stagnant, because you thought that they would add to, but they subtracted with the player. And then they lose Stephon Diggs, but he didn't give him, because of injury, he didn't give him much. He was really effective at the beginning of the first 4 games of the season, but then ended up getting hurt. So he wasn't useful to them, when they really needed them. So this team is, luckily they play in the AFC South, because I don't think they necessarily improved a whole lot when you talk about, the talent they brought in. The only way they improve is if the quarterback takes another step, because he did take a slight step back last year. He needs to take a step and a half forward. I think that's where, if this team is going to get improved, that's where it's going to show with the quarterback. Because Tim said, listen, that first year he was playing, it was, they were just getting him into the flow of it. And the numbers were not gaudy, especially not the touchdown numbers. But last year, it looked a little bit different, but they looked like they took a step back. If he can progress the way they want him to, and I'm sure he will, then yeah, they'll take a step forward. But it all depends on, I think, him and not necessarily the guys around him.
One tweeter, I don't know what you call someone who posts on X anymore, an Xer. Casey on Twitter says, his word is okay, but say it like you're impressed, but don't want to show that you're too excited. Maybe like, okay. That's the vibe of it.
All right.
Like, okay.
I see you. I
Yeah,
see you.
I'm familiar with that one.
Okay. But
More
not
than the skippity.
not
Skippity toilet.
Skippity toilet.
What is the
Your
damn
homework,
skippity
Willie,
toilet?
is to work that into conversation with your kids today, and then let us know how that goes.
But Willie, you can't say it in such a way that they know you just learned that word. You can't do that, Willie.
Okay. I'll try to be subtle.
Yeah, you got to be subtle.
Like I knew all the time.
Yeah.
There's an old episode of The Simpsons where Homer takes Bart and Lisa to Lollapalooza, and he buys one of those Rastafarian hats, and Lisa chastises him and says, like, you can't wear a Rastafarian hat, and he goes, psh, I've been Safarian since before you were born.
Oh man, yeah, Bart. I mean, Homer would say something like that.
Yes.
Don't be Homer.
Don't be
Willie.
Homer.
Yes.
Nevertheless, the Indianapolis Colts, the word for Ben Arthur, competition. Anthony Richardson and newcomer Daniel Jones will battle for the quarterback one job, with the former out indefinitely due to pain in his surgically repaired right shoulder. Jones has the early lead in the competition ahead of training camp. Although I did see, maybe it was yesterday, that Richardson said he'll be ready for training camp. I also did learn the other day that apparently Anthony Richardson is a aspiring rapper.
Is he?
That was a thing.
Man,
I believe the song is called Villain, which is what he's going to be if he continues to rap instead of studying the playbook.
Be a aspiring
This
quarterback.
is one of those things where you need to be good if you're going to do this, because if you're not good at quarterback, then it's going to affect how people view.
Right. Shaquille O'Neal rapped.
Yeah.
But Shaquille O'Neal was good.
He was a beast.
Let's give you another example. Matt Duchene in the country music. So
Yes.
When Matt Duchene was scoring 40 goals, he likes to play the guitar. When he's not doing well and making it, he needs to get rid of that guitar and concentrate on hockey.
He need to be playing
What's wrong
hockey,
with this
not the guitar.
Did you know that Shaq released 4 albums?
Yeah.
Shaq Diesel, 1993. Shaq Fu, The Return, in 1994. You Can't Stop the Rain,
Right.
REIGN.
And it was fun because Shaq was always dominating on the court.
He was dominant.
Yes.
So Shaq could have made 100 albums, and people would have been like, "Okay, he's Shaq. He's dominating on the court and
Work on your free throws, Shaq. Get out of the studio.
make a rap about
Get in
free
the gym.
throws.
Make your free throws.
Stop making rap. Make free throws."
Willie Donlick bottled you up that one time.
Donick. That scares him, Willie. That scares him.
The 2 words that frighten Shaquille O'Neal.
right.
Willie
Willie
Donnick.
That's
Donick.
right.
Yeah,
Willie
there we
Donick.
go.
Who he play for? Willie Donlick.
Ooh.
Oh,
But competition for Indianapolis, I would almost, my word would be, if that's a word like this, that's what how I feel about the Indianapolis.
Do you think
offseason.
Richardson will be the starter on opening day?
No.
I tend to agree. I think he's going to be behind, and they will be intrigued enough with Daniel Jones that they'll give him a shot.
If he's not fully healthy,
because there's a chance that
exactly.
that's the case.
Absolutely.
And it's automatic.
Absolutely. So one, if he's not fully healthy when camp start, and if Jones is underneath center on that first day, and he starts to get comfortable, and that team looks different, he will. And going to the first game, and this team is doing well, he will never see that position as a starter again for the Indianapolis Colts. He just won't.
The one word Ben Arthur chose for the Jacksonville Jaguars is bold. New coach Liam Cohen, GM James Gladstone, a.k.a. Doogie Howser, and coordinators Grant Udinsky and Anthony Campanile, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, range between 29 and 42. Jacksonville also traded up in the top 5 of the draft for Travis Hunter, a two-way unicorn, but a non-quarterback nonetheless. It's all a big risk, one that Jacksonville obviously believes can pay off. And I was listening to Robbie and Jake Lyman this morning. They had Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports on the program, and he said that this is the year for Trevor Lawrence. Like, if Trevor Lawrence can't figure it out this season, it may never happen for Trevor Lawrence.
So my word for the Jacksonville Jaguars are okay. It could be okay good. It could be okay bad.
Are we talking like okay or just?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay, like right now it's just okay.
I think bold though is not a bad one.
No, I mean
because they're to go all in on Travis Hunter, that alone is bold.
But that was easy to do. Because Travis Hunter,
but they gave up to give up what they did. That was the bold part. Selecting him is probably not that bold, right? Somebody was going to do it, but they were the ones that jumped in and gave the offer. We're going to give you extra
bold
stuff,
from that
lot of extra stuff.
Here are some of my favorites that Ben Arthur chose.
Wait, hold on. Yes. You want to know what my word for the Jacksonville Jaguars is?
I know where you're going with this. Oh, I knew it. I walked right into it.
Cringeworthy.
The word for Kansas City was provoked. Following their humiliating Super Bowl loss to the Eagles, the Chiefs are expected to have an edge in the new season. Not only did Travis Kelce commit to playing in 2025, but Kansas City will also have Rashee Rice back from an injured knee that cost him all but 4 games in 2024. There was another word in here. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Here's my favorite. Delusional. The Steelers' patience was rewarded earlier this month when Aaron Rodgers finally signed after a months-long courtship, but they have their hopes set too high if they believe the 41-year-old makes them a Super Bowl contender.
What do they have for Baltimore? Did we cover that one already?
Let's see. Baltimore. They have roused. At minicamp, Lamar Jackson spoke of the vengeance that will be on the Ravens' minds entering 2025 following their divisional round loss to the Bills last season. They also have star receiver Zay Flowers coming back from injury and added the kind of depth on defense that should give them plenty of confidence entering the new year.
I mean, I can understand, but they've been roused the last few seasons. I mean, again,
they need more roused.
Exactly, they need more roused than they have been. I think Baltimore, they've done enough, but I don't think the signing to me that is going sort of under the radar. Because they're going to need somebody. And I know they went and got Hop. I think Hop's going to be good in this offense on third down. I think he's going to give so a lot of the heat can be taken off of Zay Flowers. So I think Hop is going to be able to, as he did here, he's going to be a third down guy. He's going to be a, move the chains guy. But I think them signing Rashad Bateman was probably the biggest move that they made this offseason, and maybe that's part of the roused. You riled the Ravens back up again. They had to go out and re-sign Rashad Bateman because he did have a really good season.
That word is one letter away from being quite problematic. 615-737.
We need to remember that word throughout the season.
Yeah.
Check in on the Ravens and find
see if
out
they still roused.
The rousometer.
Yeah.
During the season.
I'll let you guys know.
Oh man. We're entering some dangerous territory. There is a lady present today. 615
come on,
737
and all throughout our listening audience.
Yes,
of course.
Exactly.
615-737-1025. Tyrese Halliburton has spoken or typed after suffering his Achilles injury in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Does the NBA have a problem with this specific injury? We'll discuss that coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Shorten the playoffs. They started 2 weeks before the draft, the NFL draft. The NBA is faster. There's more spacing. There's way more movement. Players are just moving more. It's twitchier. When you can see his Achilles flop. It's gutting. An Achilles tear used to be what old guys did at 58 playing handball. It was an old guy injury. It wasn't for 20-year-olds. That tells you everything. And baseball, for the record, has made multiple tweaks in the last 3 years. The sport has greatly benefited. The NFL tweaks in season. We love the NFL. The NBA has never been a stubborn league. Move off 7-game playoff series until you get to the finals. MJ, the most popular to the league ever was 5 games in the first round. Maybe you can do conference finals at 7. But the NBA just got a $76 billion TV deal. The billionaires are going to be okay without another home game.
That was Colin Cowherd with his suggestion on how to limit the number of Achilles injuries we've seen in the NBA. Of course, Tyrese Halliburton suffered one playing on a strained calf.
Aaron, great to see you. Great catching up.
What was that?
That was my bad.
Okay, just making sure. The magic of live radio.
A little bleed.
Yes. So Tyrese Halliburton said on social media, quote, "I do it again and again after that to fight for this city and my brothers for the chance to do something special." But as Colin Cowherd referenced in that clip, I read this in Front Office Sports, that Halliburton's Achilles injury joins Jason Tatum's Achilles injury and Damian Lillard's Achilles injuries, both of whom are also likely out for all of next season, impacting their own team's title odds. If Halliburton's Achilles is ruptured, which it is, I believe the story was written before that was made official, it would be the 8th injury of its kind during the current NBA season, according to Jeff Stotts of In Street Clothes, a website that tracks player injuries. The previous season high was 5 during the 2014-15 year. Jay Williams, his theory is the NBA is playing at its fastest pace since the early 70s, and that is contributing to the number of Achilles injuries we've seen.
Well, if that's the case, a lot of people should be getting injured because every sport, I think, has gotten faster. And, Colin Cowherd, I think that the comment he made, yes, the NFL changed, but they added, they didn't subtract, So when you say, well, the NFL has changed, the NFL has added and they're looking to add more. So when you talk about players' safety, that's not at the top of their forefront when they're trying to add games and everything. I know they've changed, camp and everything else, but they want to add another game and they want to add more teams to the playoffs or change the seeding or whatnot. So the NBA is not going to stop. The NBA is not going to take games away, I don't believe, because just because they got more money doesn't mean all of a sudden now we're going to take away more games. You got more money because you played those games. They're not. You can't just in midstream say, ESPN, thank you for all that money, or whoever else, thank you for all that money. Now we're going to take games away. That's not what I paid for if I'm a company. I didn't pay for you to take games away. You should have decided that before we redid, our deal, before we negotiated this big media deal. You should have thought about that then. So this is what happens in sports. No matter what, when something happens more than 2 times, especially in a season, and it has to be marquee players. It can't be me, you, and Willie getting hurt.
Right.
They're going to look at it as, whatever. But when you start seeing Jason Tatum one year, then Halliburton the next following year, and it's not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily the player per se, especially in Halliburton's situation. It's what each one of those teams, what it cost them. For Boston, it cost them potentially a repeat because once Jason Tatum got hurt, it was just over with for them. Even though they were basically, that was an elimination game for them. They just got blew out the water after that. You look at Halliburton or you look at KD many years ago, because their team was in a position to potentially move forward or win. If this happens in a season, I don't think we're making such a big deal about the injury. But when you have 2 or more or 3 or more injuries in a sport, then all of a sudden now it's, well, maybe it's because these guys are too fast, or maybe you're playing too many games. I mean, fool, we told all y'all that many years ago that you're playing too many games.
But to your point, if I'm not mistaken, it happened 3 times during the NBA playoffs And all three players who suffered the injury are marquee players: Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, and Tyrese Halliburton. So that certainly plays a factor in it. If it was, to borrow Jared's term, some Scarbini, it wouldn't have the same impact as three top players going down with this injury in one postseason.
I think the expansion of playoffs, more with the TV contracts to offer is an issue with all sports. I would say that the player safety element to it is something that basketball really hasn't had to deal with like hockey and football have, or even baseball with arm injuries to pitchers, right? These are all the things that start coming as the athletes evolve. They're throwing harder, they're faster, they're bigger. The technology, the training, the nutrition, it all ratchets up, and the stress on the body is more. There's the whole element of when do you start specializing, right? And how much are you playing? How much are you applying on your joints going way back before Halliburton got hurt? It didn't just happen because they had 7-game series. Colin Cowherd is way off on this. 5-game series, but so you're going to play four less games, 5 less games, and that's going to solve the problems? No, he's way off. But this is something that they've got to address on a macro scale, because the wear and tear, you watch in another week or two, ESPN's, what are they going to show? Summer League games. So these guys who are trying to make the league, they're going to play all summer and then try to play the whole season. That's very stressful on your body. You're going to be more prone. But I think basketball really hasn't had to wrap their mind around player safety. But other than the great words that we love talking about, load management, this is all part of the load management. This is why some teams have said, we're resting players during the season because it is longer. But 5-game series opposed to 7-game series, honestly, how many less games is that?
I want to throw this
5?
out. I want to throw
6?
this out there from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, who we know as a football reporter, but he was quote tweeting somebody who was wondering, why are all of these Achilles injuries happening in the NBA? And Albert Breer responded, quote, "A lot of people I know theorize that it's how early athletes specialize in single sports. You're naturally overtraining some muscles, undertraining others, and the wear and tear can lead to major injuries down the line. Achilles would be a natural one for basketball players."
Yeah, because the sudden movement, it's all of a sudden you're standing still, then you gotta move and you're cutting and whatnot. But again, how will it help if you remove, which I know you can't do, but you make these series 5-game series, at least the first round or two.
I think shortening the regular season makes more sense
than shortening
the postseason.
Exactly, shortening.
I mean, if you want to go 5, get best of 5 in the first round, fine. But
which
honestly,
is what it used to be, right?
It is what it used to be. It used to be 2 out of 3 way back when I was little in the first round, because there was less teams and all that stuff. But again, we're only talking about a couple of games. It's really the off season. It's really your upbringing. It's your whole shaping as an athlete. And it's also, are we using too many heroic methods when you're hurting and there are warning signs, right? The calf strain was a warning sign to the Achilles, and he ignored the warning sign because he wanted to play, which is understandable.
And nobody's do it again.
And nobody's talking about that part. Like, you got a warning 2 games ago that this may end up being a catastrophic injury, but they gave you all the information and you chose to play with it and saying, I'm going to rest and allow my calf muscle to heal. You didn't do it. So what did you do? You put further stress on it, and then you end up tearing it. So you could have been smart and said, you know what? I'm not doing it. And I understand why he didn't. I get it. I really do, because as a competitor, you want to be out there helping your team at all costs. And I would have did the same thing he did. But then again, I wouldn't try to change the narrative after that and say, and I know it's not Halliburton, but I'm saying, if y'all know in his situation what y'all would have done, how can you now try to build this narrative that, these guys are, faster, this and that and this, that's why they're getting injured? No, he got injured. He blew out his Achilles because he didn't rest. His body was saying, sit down, rest. and you didn't do it.
But
so,
as you know, as a competitive
Yeah, you gotta
professional
play.
athlete, especially in Game 7 of
Yeah.
the NBA Finals, Tyrese Halliburton said, "If I can walk, I want to play."
And I don't fault him. I don't fault him for that because I would have done the same
Right.
thing.
You can speak to that.
Yeah. So, but I wouldn't allow everyone to start setting the narrative because of that, because I knew the risk. I was already injured. I knew the risk. There's not you're gonna blow an Achilles probably, without knowing it, where there's no pain or anything else, and it just happens at that particular moment. But I'm sure you do get a warning sign like, man, it's sore, or man, it feels a little weak. Maybe I need to rest. But understanding that I don't have time to rest. Basketball, and correct me if I'm right, Willie or Adam, basketball is the only sport of the major sports outside of hockey that in the off season they play. Like a lot of these guys
Olympics,
play. Yeah, and
international
football they
summer
don't
league.
play.
Yeah.
Hockey, those guys are resting.
They'll do the.
There
they'll
are
do
some
the-
baseball winter leagues,
Yeah.
but that's usually for people that need to play.
Exactly.
But they'll
That
also
didn't
do
play.
like the
Yeah.
street ball stuff, like at
Uh-huh.
Rucker Park. Like
Yeah, just all that stuff
they'll do that stuff too.
instead of just training. But I understand it's almost a part of the training. You got to play basketball and a part of the training,
Yeah.
but that's just putting more
And-
wear and tear on
and
your body.
I would say that the nature of the game with the players that are taller, like a Chet Holmgren, right, who can play on the perimeter, and the lack of the big aircraft carriers in the middle, that there's more stress on the bigger guys. The longer they're all taller, the average player's taller. They shoot from the outside. There's more space to cover in a game. And so I do think there's a little bit to that theory, the high end possessions that we're seeing. And can we take this right now and once and for all tell everybody who thinks nobody plays defense in the NBA that the guys are lazy and put that to rest based
I
on
hope
this?
we can.
Let's run through some texts quickly. One texter says, "No one wears high top shoes anymore. All the guys rupturing their Achilles are wearing non-supporting low top shoes."
But their ankles are taped and everything else. So
One texter says, "I wonder if the year-round training that happens now doesn't give tendons and ligaments time to rest and they become brittle and tear easier." Always wondered that. Matthew in Nashville points out, as I've seen, that all three of those players, Lillard, Tatum, and Halliburton, wear number 0. Just a complete coincidence. But I do want to quickly share my personal experience with tearing an Achilles. I have not torn my Achilles. My father tore his Achilles watching a Duke game.
did he jump up and were y'all winning or did they lose?
Let me take you back. It
Okay.
was the year 2006. It's March 2006. Duke is in the ACC championship game in Greensboro, North Carolina, against the Boston College Eagles. It's a
Boston
back and
College.
forth. It's a back and forth affair. I pulled up the play-by-play because I want to figure out the exact moment it happened. With 1:17 left in the second half, J.J. Redick hits a 3-point jumper to give Duke a 74-73 lead after Boston College went to the free throw line for 2 free throws to take a 2-point lead.
And your dad jumped in
My
the air.
dad
didn't he?
jumped up in the air and fell right down. And I'm just like, what is going on with my dad right now? And he said, "I can't feel my foot."
Ooh.
My dad had surgery later that day.
Wow.
Ooh.
So 20 years later, I came up today for some reason. I don't know why we were talking about it. I think we were talking about this, Tyrese Halliburton and such. And my dad says, JJ still owes me 20 years later. So if my dad ever comes across JJ Redick, that's going to be a fun story to tell. But my father tore his Achilles watching a Duke game. So if anybody questions my fandom or my father's fandom, my dad suffered a serious injury jumping off the couch.
He has the scar.
Dedicated.
He has the scar to show you.
Yes.
Okay. He has the scar to show you.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the Achilles issue. You can also comment on my father's Achilles injury from 20 years ago. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, the NHL draft is on Friday. The Nashville Predators have, at the moment, 3 first-round draft picks. How have other NHL teams that have had 3 first-round draft picks fared in recent years? I have the list. We'll discuss it coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Ving, and 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. The NHL Draft, first round, Friday. The Predators, as of now, have 3 picks in the first round. Number 5 overall, number 23 overall, and number 26 overall. They also have number 35 overall in the second round, number 55 overall in the second round, and number 67 overall in the third round. So by my quick math, that's 6 picks in the top 100 for the Nashville Predators. Again, as of now, Barry Trotz will join Jared Stillman, scheduled for the 3 o'clock hour on Stillman and Company. But again, because the Predators at the moment have 3 first-round picks, I was curious about how other NHL teams have fared that made 3 first-round picks in a single draft. And it's actually happened more often than you think. It's happened every draft year at least once since 2020. It happened once last year, the Blackhawks. It happened once in 2023, the Blues. It happened 3 times in 2022. The Coyotes, Sabres, and Blackhawks all made 3 first-round selections in the 2022 draft. The Blue Jackets did it in 2021, and the Devils and Senators did it in 2020. So it happens a lot. I was actually surprised by this to find out how often it's happened. I thought it would be instructive to look back at how some of these teams did making these selections. Now, I'm not going to look at last year's Chicago Blackhawks, for example, because I don't think any of these players have played in the NHL. So I wanted to go back, 4 or 5 years, because I think that's a reasonable amount of time, really, to look at how certain players have popped. There's one example that jumps off the page to me. The Ottawa Senators in 2020, they had 3 first-round picks, number 3 overall, number 5 overall, and number 28 overall. So they did have 2 top 5 picks. But if you miss on either of those picks, that can really set you back. In 2020, the Ottawa Senators took Tim Stützle, number 3 overall, top line forward for the Ottawa Senators. Yeah. They took.
You may not have heard of him, Jared. Have you heard of Tim Stützle?
Probably not.
I don't know. He's really good.
Outstanding player.
Yeah.
Jake Sanderson, number 5 overall.
Really
outstanding
good.
young
Really
defenseman. And Ridley Gregg, number 28 overall. He's a key bottom 6 player for the Ottawa Senators. So the Senators nailed it. And that draft has set them up to take the step we saw them take this
I haven't
season.
heard of any of those guys, so they must suck, according to Jared.
Thank you, Chase. So the Ottawa Senators are an example of nailed it with Stützle, Sanderson.
I mean, they haven't won anything yet,
right?
But you hope
they have,
and they've picked high a lot. But those are 3 good picks. It looks like those are hits.
Yes, absolutely. The most infamous example, the 2015 Boston Bruins. Not only did they have 3 first-round picks, they had 3 consecutive first-round picks. They picked 13 overall, 14 overall, and 15 overall.
That was crazy.
And boy, oh boy, did they do whatever the opposite of nailing it is. They took Jakub Zboril, a defenseman, number 13 overall. They took Jake DeBrusk, who's had a solid NHL career, but nothing.
He's a good player.
Right.
Good player.
Jake DeBrusk, number 14 overall.
At 14, DeBrusk, I think it's certainly not a home run, but he's been a really good player. He's a good NHL player.
No longer a member of the Bruins, now a member of the Vancouver Canucks. And Zach Senyshyn, I believe is how you pronounce it, a forward and number 15 overall.
So that's a 1 for 3 with, I would say a double. Like, I mean,
with 2 duds. Zboril and Senyshyn never made anything.
And we should point out that happens, especially in that section, after the first 6 or 7 picks each year.
Yes.
Once you get into the middle part of the first round, it's a little more, it's more hit or miss than it is in probably any other sport with the exception of baseball, right? Where every year, if you go down the list, you're going to see guys that you've never heard of. Going, wait a minute, I've never even heard of that guy. He was the 15th pick. So it kind of couches your expectations of, oh, we got 3 first-round picks. It's very wide-ranging of how that can
now the Bruins,
because remember that Ottawa, we just lauded Ottawa.
Yeah.
2 of those picks were in the top 5.
That is true.
It's a little easier to hit on those picks.
Yes. The Bruins, by the way, didn't suffer greatly from that because I believe it was the year before they drafted David Pastrnak, and the year after they drafted Charlie McAvoy. So they had to make up for it. But here's something fun. Would you like to know the 3 players who went directly behind those 3 picks at number 16, number 17,
I'm sure
and number 18
Bruins
in
fans know.
2015? Are you ready for this? At number 16, Matthew Barzal. At number 17, Kyle Connor. And number 18, Thomas Chabot.
Oh, 3 really good ones.
Yeah, so the Bruins, they did not do a great job there.
That's why I always try to remember these guys are high school seniors. They're high school seniors. They're at prom. They're messing around in the classroom. They're young. Some of them can't even grow a beard.
That is true. But Willie, I want to talk to you about some other examples, and I would love to get your viewpoint on it, because I think if the Predators ultimately make the 3 picks, I think what this exercise shows you is that you need to hit on at least one. If you hit on 2 out of 3, that's really good. If you hit on all 3, you should be set up for a
franchise changer.
You should be set up for success.
And I would throw in that early 2nd round pick that they have. What is that? 36,
35,
35.
Overall.
So 4 of the top 35. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, you're kind of on the fringe. You're all but the first round there.
So here are some other examples in recent history. Let's go to the 2021 Columbus Blue Jackets. They picked 5th overall, 12th overall, and 25th overall. They took Kent Johnson, number 5 overall, Cole Sillinger, number 12 overall, and defenseman Corson Ceulemans, number 25 overall. I'm not too familiar with Ceulemans, but Johnson and Sillinger. Johnson has been more productive than Sillinger, but how would you describe that draft haul for the Blue Jackets first round?
How do you spell Ceulemans?
Ceulemans. Corson, not Carson. Corson.
Ceulemans. Oh, honestly, I don't know anything about him, but I would say he is on a more normal track for a late first round pick. So it's still to be determined. He's played a couple years in the AHL, and he hasn't made it up to the NHL yet. So these guys are all about 22. So you should start to be seeing the signs. So I think the higher 2 first-round picks, Cole Sillinger and Kent Johnson, are both very good NHL players, but I think Columbus is trying to determine, are these foundational type of guys that we want long-term? I think Johnson is on his way. Sillinger, I think, if you look at what happened with Columbus last year, like every team's got a different outlook, right? They brought in a lot of Russian players. They had a lot of young players, some non-first rounders, but they have some young players that were doing some things. Like on certain nights, they were like, wow.
Marchenko.
Yeah.
Who else is coming? There's another Russian player in there too, whose name is escaping me right now.
And you're like, woo, these guys look really good. I mean, ask the Predators how that went late in the season. They got absolutely destroyed in Columbus.
They did.
And so they can score. Now, defending was a whole nother thing, but they've got sort of a cluster of young guys that they got to sort out. And so I would think that that's a team that other teams are going to go, hey, we're trying to get a little younger. Can we give you some veterans in exchange for one of these young guys, and maybe you get some stabilization? But I think that if I had that as my 3 guys for my first round picks, I would say that's a pretty good grade. Johnson alone, Johnson looks like he's going to be really good.
Now, here's an interesting one. The Vegas Golden Knights in 2017. So that would have been their first entry draft.
Yes.
Their first
This
pick.
is a really intriguing.
Their first pick at number 6 overall. You know him. You may not love him, Predators fans. Cody Glass, number 6 overall.
Come on, you got to love Cody Glass.
Nice guy.
As a guy.
Nice guy. It just hasn't worked out at the NHL level. Nick Suzuki at number 13 overall. And Eric Brandstrom, a defenseman at number 15 overall. So we know Cody Glass around here. He's bounced around the league. But here's what's interesting. We know the Golden Knights, they trade their first round picks like they're nothing and their top prospects. Nick Suzuki, who is now the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, the Golden Knights traded him to Montreal for Max Pacioretty. And Eric Brandstrom was involved in the deal for Mark Stone. So although Suzuki and Brandstrom didn't really amount to anything with the Golden Knights, they did help the Golden Knights acquire 2 important
Right.
veteran players.
And Brandstrom is a stroke of genius because at the time he was a pretty high-rated prospect that has not blossomed into an everyday NHL defenseman. He's a fringe, up and down kind of AHL guy that's bounced around. And they got Mark Stone as the principal guy in that deal. Suzuki has turned out to be I think he's the captain of
he is.
the
He is the
Canadiens.
captain
He's
of the
very,
Canadiens.
very good. So they gave up a pretty good player for Max Pacioretty, who gave them a ready-made guy towards the end of his prime. They got some good mileage out of him, but the Vegas Golden Knights are in a category of their own. Would we agree of how they did it? And you can go back to that draft where they worked the system as well as you could possibly work it to get those extra assets and turn them into something quick. So I don't know if we can learn anything from Vegas because it was so unique.
I think what I'm seeing here, like you can go back, like Washington had 3 overall picks, 3 first-round picks, I should say, 3 first-round picks in 2004. Alex Ovechkin, number 1 overall. Jeff Schultz, a defenseman. He was a solid hand for a long time at number 27 overall. And Mike Green, who had some outstanding offensive seasons and was a big part of the revitalization of the Washington Capitals alongside Nick Backstrom and Alex Semin, who was another first-round pick of the Capitals a couple of years earlier. So I do think that what this tells me is if you have 3 first-round picks, you better hit on one of them. You better hit on one of them.
Not to mention the two second-round picks. Right. So somewhere in there, they need some hits.
Right. If you think of draft picks like lottery tickets, I think that's an easy metaphor, right? The Predators have 3 lottery tickets. The 5th overall lottery ticket has more value than the 23rd overall lottery ticket and the 26th overall lottery ticket. But if the Predators stay with the 3 first-round picks, they really need to hit on at least one of them. It may not end up being number 5 overall. Maybe they find a diamond in the rough at number 23 overall. But they absolutely need to hit on one of them.
And Jared went through the drafts last year at one point, and I took issue with part of what he was saying because I still think the jury is out on drafts from about 2021 this coming year, and that's guys like LaRue and Svechkov. That's you need to start to see something there. And that's with Sillinger and some of the other guys you mentioned in that draft. When you're about 22, you need to be starting to see the stuff because you can still have the light go on, but you need to see the picture coming into focus. So we're not still sure what the Predators have from drafts 2021 until present. And you're about to add this group to the pool of prospects that they're still hopeful they're going to get some measure of special players out of that. But I think we can safely say now that since, and I forget exactly what year Roman Josi was and the UC Saros, I think Saros was 2014, 2013, somewhere in there. There's a section of time between about 2014 and 2021 where they were not able to draft a special player. They drafted a lot of players that made the NHL and are solid NHL players, but guys who move the needle, they are desperate to get 1 or 2 of those guys. You've talked about the Stars so often. The Stars, I don't know if they have loads and loads of NHL players, but they've hit home runs on 2 or 3 guys, and that's a franchise changer.
And I think another thing working against the Predators in the eyes of some fans is you look at the first-round picks they've made in recent years who are no longer members of the team. You can go back as far as 2014, Kevin Fiala, no longer a member of the team. Dante Fabro, no longer a member of the team. Ellie Tolvanen, no longer a member of the team.
Right.
Philip Tomasino, no longer a member of the team.
Right.
Yaroslav Askarov, no longer a member of the team.
And Askarov is a special case.
But
I would say that
Fiala was traded for Granlund.
Fiala was obviously they knew was a really good player, and they made a bold move to get Granlund, a really good player. But other than those 2, Askarov, who, we'll see. We don't know. Fiala, we know. None of those other guys that they've discarded are special players. There's a lot of, like I said, they've drafted a lot of good players.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are all good, steady NHL players that I don't think move the needle. Now, you can get into what they got when they moved these guys. Did they get enough? That's a different discussion. But just basically who they draft, who's the person.
Let's go to Bob and Antioch quickly on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Bob, thank you for holding, and please go ahead.
Good afternoon, guys. I know it's going to take 4 to 6 years from the time they're drafted until we see how they really are. But in this year's draft, will you guys be satisfied if they wind up 4 or 5 years from now with a player whose impact is similar to David Legwand or Seth Jones or players like that?
Thank you for the call, Bob. And now, if you're speaking about their impact with the Predators specifically, Seth Jones is a little bit of a different case. Because
so those two guys are the only top 5 picks that they've ever had.
That is true. Not leg ones. Jones was here for 2+ seasons before being traded for Ryan Johansson. I was not here for the David Legwand era. David Legwand, I think, is would you consider him a polarizing figure among Predators fans?
I don't know about polarizing. I think it is a feeling of a guy who, for the second pick that they hoped would be the franchise cornerstone, it was pretty evident after a couple of years that he was never going to be that. So then the question would be, could you be satisfied with what he was, which was a good NHL player for a long, long time, that you knew what you were getting, and it always had you wanting more, probably. But it was always like, well, the guy's not a bust, right? The guy held basically every franchise record that there was for a long time just because he played for a long time. He went to the post, and he put up some decent numbers. So I don't know if that's polarizing.
In
right?
his full seasons with the Predators, so not the one game he played in 1998, 1999, or the section of his season in 2013-14 when he was traded to the Red Wings. So over 13-ish seasons, he averaged 48.3 points per 82 games. Not what you're wanting from the second overall pick, but he did have the longevity, right? So that's how you would weigh it. Is it about the longevity? David Legwand was a contributor for this team for more than a decade, even if he wasn't the high-end player. 615-737-1025. I guess it depends on how you define somebody's value. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Scott Wheeler, who will join us tomorrow at I believe at 11:20 tomorrow. He is one of the Athletics' top NHL draft analysts. He has his new mock draft out. We'll discuss that. There's also some interesting questions in the text line about the Predators' approach to the offseason. We'll get to those coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace, Finken, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Talking Predators, by the way. Robbie Stanley texted me during the break and said, Paul Kariya deserves the Hall of Fame for no other reason than getting David Legwand to 63 points in a season. By the way, I believe the class of 2025 of the Hockey Hall of Fame will be unveiled later today. And if I'm also not mistaken, Pekka Rinne now eligible for the Hockey Hall of Fame. I doubt he is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and we can have that discussion.
But we didn't think Shea Weber was either. And all of a sudden,
that
boom,
is true.
He was in there.
So Scott Wheeler, who will join us tomorrow in the first hour, the NHL draft analyst for The Athletic, released his final mock draft of the 2025 draft season. It was earlier today, and he has the Predators selecting Porter Martone, the winger. He writes, my sense for this pick hasn't changed. I could see the Preds considering Hagens, Martin, or Desnoyers, I believe that's how it's pronounced, if he's around here. But I also know they were in Brampton a lot to watch Martone this year, including upper management. And I think he's their guy. Martone would give them the high skill, top of the lineup forward prospect they've been searching for as long as the organization has existed. Right shot wingers with his size and profile don't grow on trees either, even if center is the more premium position. He's listed at 6'3", 204 pounds. So I am curious how Predators fans would feel if they take a winger at number 5 overall instead of a center. So let me know. 615-737-1025.
I think it will be a question if they take Martone, but I think number one, there will be some guys who are listed as centers at the top of this draft that don't end up playing center, because that it's like D. Macy, a cornerback. You drafted a guy at a corner, and he ends up playing safety, or you draft a guy as a tackle, and he plays
guard.
Everybody
guard.
That does happen. You always hope. In baseball, it's the same thing. You draft a guy as a shortstop, he ends up playing third. He ends up playing outfield. He ends up playing first because your body changes, right? You're 18. You don't know exactly how your body's going to fill out. You try to project as best you can. But I think the most important thing is you got to get a really good player here. And if it's not a center, I know the ideal scenario, and Barry Trotz, I'm sure we'll say it today in some form at 3:00. The perfect pick would be a center who ends up being the number one center that you've been looking for. David Legwand was a number one center, but he was not a great number one center. Ryan Johansson was a really good number one center for a decent size window, not for a long time, and it would fluctuate, right? They haven't had the Alexander Barkov or Connor McDavid. You hate to use him; he's the best player in the world. Nobody, but there are guys that you can draft who end up being your 1C for a long time and a really good player. They have lacked that. But if it's not there, it's not there. And if Martone is the best winger, the best player by far in your mind, then that's what you go with.
So, Derek, before you respond, 3 responses to my question about how would Predators fans feel if Porter Martone was the selection, as predicted by Scott Wheeler. One texter says, gross, LOL. One texter says, if Hagens is available and they don't take him, I'll be pissed. Sean says, if the kid, meaning Martone, can turn into a Scott Hartnell 2.0, I'll take it. Now, Hartnell, we all love Scott Hartnell around here. Hartnell had a long career, played 17 years in the NHL. At his best, he was a 30-goal, 60-point guy. I mean, Scott Hartnell carved out himself a nice career. Yep. Paul says, whoever the Preds take, if he's any good, he'll likely be headed to the Wild right before his breakout season. One texter says, old swing and a miss, Barry, I assume, if they don't take Martone. Jeff says, Martone would be fine, but knowing the Predators' luck, Schaefer will fall to them just like Jones did back then. Now, if you recall, in the 2013 NHL draft, there was a lot of discussion that Seth Jones would be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. That did not happen. Nathan McKinnon went number 1 overall. A lot of mock drafts around that time had the Predators taking a number 4 overall. This young up-and-comer out of Finland, his name is Alexander Barkov. Can you only imagine?
That's who I think that's who was slotted to the Predators in more mock drafts than any other player, was Barkov. but Florida took him second. And I don't remember any of the mock drafts at the time having him going that early. It threw everybody off.
Yes. I mean, Jones was the best player available to the Predators at number 4.
Most people had Jones 1, McKinnon 2, Drouin 3, and then Barkov 4.
Oh man, if only.
Yeah.
If only. So we did get one text that I do want to address. One texter says, I've heard offer sheet mentioned a bit this week / last week. Can you please explain what that is and maybe provide a likely example and a dream example of how the Predators could use this? Thanks. Love the show. Hey, we love you too. So let's really quickly do a offer sheet primer. So offer sheets are a way that one team can poach a restricted free agent from another team. And the way it works is it's based on the cap hit of the offer sheet. So I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this as simply as I can. So depending on the cap hit, there is a corresponding draft pick compensation that the team has to give you. So for example, if the Predators wanted to extend an offer sheet to player X, and the annual average value of that offer sheet, so the price of the contract per year, was between roughly $7 million and $9.3 million. The Predators would have to give up a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. The kicker is the picks that are used have to be your own picks. So, for example, the Predators could not use the second and third of their first-round picks in an offer sheet because they did not originally belong to the Predators. They belonged to the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Vegas Golden Knights through the San Jose Sharks. So you have to own your own picks. But Willie, let's use the example from a year ago with the Edmonton Oilers in the St. Louis Blues. So the St. Louis Blues targeted a young defenseman named Philip Broberg and a young forward named Dylan Holloway, who were on the Edmonton Oilers. They were restricted free agents. The Oilers weren't sure if they were going to be able to re-sign them. So the Blues signed them to offer sheets. The Oilers then have a week to match. And if the Oilers match the offer sheet in this scenario, the contract that the Blues whipped up, that's the contract that those players get. They can't renegotiate.
Right.
So why don't you take it from there with Broberg and Holloway, just to give our listeners.
Yeah, and I think we should define Broberg and Holloway were sort of young up-and-comers who the offer sheet didn't have to be an enormous amount of money, but they were able to get above the level that the Oilers were able to match because the Oilers had a lot of salary cap problems. So what has happened traditionally is GMs have shied away from trying to poach a restricted free agent because most of the time, what you're doing is negotiating the contract for the other team because, as Adam said, they have the right to match it. So you have to overpay. You have to sort of go above and say, I want the other team to say, golly, we're not matching that. That's ridiculous. Or we can't match that. And that's what the Flyers tried to do with Shea Weber, which is the most famous example of a restricted free agent offer in the Predators' history. Shea Weber was offered an enormous contract, which, by the way, is still in effect. It's still active because it was a 15-year contract. And it was such a high-end offer that the Flyers said the lowly Predators and their mid-level budget will not be able to match this. But the Predators did. And so that what ended up happening, it wasn't the ideal contract for David Poile, but they did the negotiations for them. And it had been a really tough negotiation heading into that. They matched it. So that's what happens more often than not. So you're trying to find that level of, is this player out there, A, willing to sign an offer sheet? That's A. And then B, will the other team match it?
So another example.
And because it worked last year, I think people are wondering,
Yes.
are more teams going to try this than have before because of the success of what the Blues had with the two guys they got last year from Edmonton?
So 5 years ago, the Montreal Canadiens tendered an offer sheet to Sebastian Aho, the top line center for the Carolina Hurricanes. It had an annual average value of $8.454 million. The Hurricanes then had 7 days to match, or they would have received a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick in compensation from the Canadiens. The way that the Canadiens structured it, because it's not just the cap hit, it's also the salary and things of that nature. Teams get creative. So it's like, we're going to pay all of his salary up front. And this cheap team, they're not going to be able to pay, similar to what you were talking about with Shea Weber. The Canadiens matched it. And that's the contract that Aho played under for the Hurricanes. They weren't able to renegotiate. That was the contract. So
and they laughed, like, because I think Montreal, when they signed the offer sheet, like, haha, Carolina's not going to be able to do it. And immediately Carolina was laughing and said, hey, thanks for making it happen for us. We were having some trouble ourselves, and now we've got our guy. I would say this, though, Adam, you tell me if you agree. I used the example of Noah Dobson yesterday, who, as we sit here today, because the window's not open yet, right? I don't know what the first day is you can sign a guy to an offer sheet, but it's not for a few weeks, right? It's not till around the same time as unrestricted free agency, July 1st. Is it in that neighborhood? It's definitely after the draft.
Yes.
So between now and that date, whenever it is, teams can find common ground and sign some of these guys. But right now, Noah Dobson is a defensive player. I think it has there's a lot of things you can say. Is that a fit with the Predators? Yeah. Would he be worth, in your mind, if let's say you signed him to a $9.3 million offer sheet and you had to give up a first, second, and third? To me, I think he is absolutely worth that.
I think I may lean that way as well. But again,
and the Islanders might be in a position to, because they've got some tough choices. And remember, they're about to pick the first pick in the draft, and they're likely going to pick Schaefer, the cornerstone franchise defenseman. Dobson is not that, but he's really, really good. To me, that would be a guy that I would circle, not just for the Predators, but around the league, is what if you were to sign him to an offer sheet and really put the screws to the Islanders?
And the Predators, based on that annual average value, would be able to do that because they have their own first-round pick, they have their own second-round pick, and they have their own third-round pick. But that would mean giving up the number 5 overall pick in the draft.
No, it would be for next year.
Oh, that's right. You're right. You're absolutely right.
It does. I wouldn't do it for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
I wouldn't trade the 5th pick in the draft.
You are absolutely
But
correct.
I would trade my next year's first-round pick.
Correct. It would be
to do
the
that.
2026 first-round pick.
Yeah.
My mistake.
So and those picks are supposedly valuable, and you do have to be realistic and say there is a possibility that the Predators' first-round pick next year could be pretty high if it doesn't work out this year.
615-737-1025. I hope that was educational, listener, asking about offer sheets, because as we talked about yesterday, identifying players, younger players who you could take that calculated risk on, offer sheets are one way you can do that. We talked about Marco Rossi yesterday. He is eligible for an offer sheet. So that is one way the Predators could go about this.
And don't forget, too, this is the last part, that you threaten to do an offer sheet, but really you're talking to the GM and saying, hey, if you're not sold on this guy, we're thinking about an offer sheet here. Can we talk trade? Because that is when you can kind of pinpoint the value, too. You could work it out that way, too.
615-737-1025. We will take your thoughts on the NHL draft, and we'll wrap up the show. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. If you are on the verge of starting a home improvement project, everything's in place. You've got the vision, you've got the room, you've got the blueprints, and now you need the funding. Loan Pronto wants you to know that they've got the best engine to make your home more valuable. Use your home's equity to fund your home improvement project. It's called the Rapid Equity Loan Program. And the good news about this is you can get the money quickly, instant approvals, low rates, no hard credit pull up front, and you can keep your low rate first mortgage. Don't mess with that. So call Loan Pronto right now for a free instant home appraisal. See how much cash you can get for that home improvement project and get it quick. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, here with you. Stillman and company coming up next. Barry Trotz, scheduled to join Jared Stillman at approximately 3:40 p.m. And here's a nice surprise because Jared wasn't sure he was going to be able to join us as he gets set up at Bridgestone Arena, but Jared Stillman is indeed here. Hello, Jared. How are you?
I am fabulous. We are hanging out here at the top of the BetMGM Sports Lounge, and Barry Trotz will be sitting right across from me at 3:40 today. In 2 hours, basically, he'll be sitting here, and I don't know if you guys are looking at the stream or not, but I got questions. So I got questions, and so I'm excited, and I'm glad to be here. And I will tell you this, I was listening to somebody complain today about the fact that the NBA draft is right after the end of the NBA finals. Like, can we have a little time in between, get excited about the draft? And I've realized, I'm like, you know what? They're doing all this because football's off. So let's get all of our stuff out of the way. And then everybody else wants to take off for the summer. That's what I've realized it's about. It is football's off. Let's get our drafts in. Let's get our free agency periods in. And then let's go out to our cottages in Muskoka and enjoy our time.
There's a lot
off.
of cottages. There are a lot of cottages.
Let me tell you, I've learned a lot about cottages,
yes,
which I do not own, by the way. Neither do, I guess, Lindsay's family does. But I do not own a cottage, but man, it sounds like everybody in Canada has a cottage. So there will
Yes.
probably be a lot of cottages that will be people will head to after the draft.
So I don't want you to give too much away because, as you said, you do have questions for Barry Trotz. So I'll try to keep it general. What are you hoping to hear from Barry Trotz today? What message are you hoping he provides to you and, by extension, Predators fans about the next couple of weeks and the immediate future of the Predators?
You know, Adam, I think you're going to like this because I think you've kind of been searching for this yourself. And that is, are we more worried about what's going to happen in 2025 and 2026, or are we more worried about what I keep calling the 2028 playoffs? Like, are we more worried about the 2026 playoffs and making the 2026 playoffs, or are we more worried about the 2028 playoffs, the 2029 playoffs? Because let's say they draft James Higgins on Friday night. I mean, James Higgins may go back to BC. But I can guarantee you James Higgins, if everything goes to plan, will be the number one center of the Nashville Predators in 2028 and 2029. And I think for the last year, they tried to kind of do both. And I give them credit because they didn't really mortgage any future assets outside of some contracts and cap space and things like that. They didn't really mortgage any future assets last year by going for it. They didn't turn around and trade, 2 first rounders and a young prospect to try to get Mitch Marner. They just spent money on Forsberg or on Stamkos, Marchessault, and Brady Shea. But last year was kind of trying to do both, trying to build up a team for 2025 while also still keeping everything in the oven for down the road. I think there needs to be an honest direction for the fans of where is the priority? Is the priority the 2028 playoffs, or are they the 2026 playoffs? And while most of us would assume it's probably going to be the 2028 playoffs, the thing that throws a wrench into all of this, and I don't know what Bill Haslam has said or not, is if the owner comes down and says, make the playoffs or else, and then all of a sudden the general manager and the coaches have to act accordingly. So I think that's the big thing I want to know. Is this about the 2026 playoffs, or is the main priority about the 2028, 2029 playoffs?
Now, are you, because they just hired a new coach in Luke Richardson, will that be one of your questions? Because to me, we talked about it earlier, and we came at it from 2 or 3 different angles. And my angle was more so what I thought you would think is, because of what happened last season, he's on the hot seat, Coach Bruno. You bring another guy in with experience at that position, at the coach's position, head coach's position. Can this potentially be something that you look toward moving to if indeed the season doesn't start off well?
Derek, just say it, man. Is this Andrew Burnett insurance?
I'm sure, and I know that's a question you have for him.
It is. I think it. So he's gonna meet with the media at 3:00. We're gonna run that live. And the reason why I decided to do that, they are not streaming this press conference. So there would be some things that would come out maybe on Twitter, but as far as the fans themselves, we made the choice today to air the press conference live at 3:00 instead of just waiting until he sits down with us, because I do think there's going to be a lot of questions that get asked and answered in the 3:00 media session that then instead of having to rehash with him at 3:00, we can maybe go a little bit deeper at 3:40. And I do expect that he'll get asked about, is Luke Richardson, a former head coach who has no ties to Andrew Burnett, is he Andrew Burnett insurance? I don't know the answer to that. But yes, to your point, if it doesn't get asked in his press conference, it absolutely will get asked in our conversation about whether or not this is Andrew Burnett insurance, and whether or not Andrew Burnett, who again has never worked with Luke Richardson, if this was an Andrew Burnett hire or this was a Barry Trotz hire.
And Jared, I think it's fair to ask that question. I would say, though, that you cannot avoid that perception. The second you see that, it's going to be out there. People are going to wonder that. And I don't know that you can avoid that. But I would think it's important. And I think this is what you're going to definitely hear from Barry Trotz. And maybe you've got an angle to this if it's not sufficiently asked this way in the press conference, is I think Luke Richardson brings a couple of things to the table that they were lacking on the staff. And I always think that if your coach is wired one way, the good cop, if you will, or the player's coach, you need that other guy that is the Sipowicz is and Luke Richardson is a 6'4" Sipowicz, right? His body type's a little different. But I think Luke Richardson, is a defensive-minded guy. He was a great defenseman in the league. He's tough. He's physically, he's got a presence. They didn't have that on the staff. And I think, I don't know if I would say defensive coordinator, but they did mention a couple times in the press conference, defense. So I'm wondering about that, right? Is can he mesh and provide something that the staff was lacking last year?
I think that, in a perfect world, Willie, that's exactly what he's going to do. Is he's going to come in here and he's going to help out the defense, which was so terrible last year. He's going to come in here and help out the defense, and he's going to be Phil Housley 2.0 is, I think, the hope here. But I do think it is unavoidable that Andrew Burnett is probably on the single hottest seat you could be on. And I woke up this morning thinking Andrew Burnett was on a 10 out of 10 hot seat, and if things didn't go right at the beginning, Carl Taylor could end up being the head coach of the Predators. Now I believe that Andrew Burnett is still on a 10 out of 10 hot seat, but that Luke Richardson could be the next head coach of the Predators. But to your point, I think that what Barry's going to say is that his hope is Luke Richardson comes in here and helps the defense, and that Andrew Burnett is the coach the whole season and for the next 10 years, and that Luke Richardson's a part of that. But again, the word I used was insurance. I've got insurance on my car. I know you guys have it on yours unless you're driving illegally. You guys have car insurance, and I think we all hope that we never get in a wreck, knock on wood. But, and I don't think Barry Trotz is going to go there with me on the but the but seems very glaring here.
I do want to ask you, we are going to have Scott Wheeler on the program tomorrow, I believe at 11:20, the Athletics NHL draft analyst. He released his final mock draft this morning. Has the Predators taking Porter Martone with the 5th overall pick. How would you feel if that is who the Predators take number 5 overall on Friday?
I would be a little surprised if that's what happens. The only reason I say that is because I don't expect that Barry Trotz thinks he'll be picking high next year. And I have had Barry Trotz on the show probably 40 times over the last 2.5 years. And the one thing he has constantly said is he has been searching for that number 1 center. And unlike somebody that wasn't the head coach here for 20 years, Barry Trotz does have the same frustration the fans have about never having a true number 1 center. Barry Trotz has as the coach of those teams that was making the playoffs with guys that were good. Like Mike Fisher was a good center, but he wasn't a true number 1 center. There are so many centers in this draft. It's almost like an ice cream flavor. Which one do you like? Do you like Denoyer? Do you like Martin? Do you like O'Brien? Do you like Frindell? Do you like Higgins? I don't see Barry Trotz passing on the center.
I think you're going to hear a lot of that, Jared, and you are dead on. I think in a perfect world, you would take the center. But what if they have Martone just valued higher? They think he's that much better than the center, because you always hammer the Titans for drafting a guy at tackle and playing him at guard, right? There are plenty of players in different sports that are drafted at one position, but they can't stay at that position anyway. So it's a little less black and white than I think we want it to be, because I'm with you. I would love for them to say, this is our number 1 center, right? But it's not always that easy.
If that's the case, if they think that Martone is the 3rd best player and they're on the clock at 5 and they think he's significantly better than these other centers, I would advise that they take him. I just don't see that happening. I just see them taking a center the way that this draft is playing out.
Well, that'll do it for us today. Barry Trotz will sit down with Jared Stillman at Bridgestone Arena at approximately 3:40. Jared will also carry Barry Trotz's news conference with reporters live starting at 3 o'clock. Looking forward to hearing all of it. Stillman and Company coming up next.
Be loving your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Tuesday. Peace.